Welcome to Naperville Notables. I'm Liz Spencer. Today I'm sitting down with Naperville's #1 volunteer and the owner of Minuteman Press, and you guessed it, that's Ray Kinney. Now you arrived, I assume, much like myself, everybody thinks I grew up here because I just embraced the community and the community has embraced me. But you arrived in 1979.
Yes,
so
I was coming into my freshman year of high school.
Right, so you were 14.
We had grew up in Champaign, Illinois.
Okay.
The youngest of 5 kids. We were in Columbus, Ohio for 2.5 years, and then my dad got transferred to Chicago. And we're sitting at the kitchen table in Columbus, Ohio, and he had a Park District guide for Wheaton and one for Naperville. And the Park District guide is what flipped the coin for our family, and we chose Naperville. And my mom and my father had come here to look at houses, and they said everybody was friendly, and they waved. And so we moved here in '79, and it was the end of my 8th grade, so I had that whole summer that I really didn't know anybody in my neighborhood, so I just shot baskets in my driveway, and pretty much they called me the hick with the basketball because I kind of had a little southern twang from my Champaign days, I guess. So.
Is that the love of the St. Louis Cardinals?
St. Louis Cardinals
okay,
and the Illini, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Just explain us a little bit about that allegiance. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. Go Cubs.
The rest of my family's all Cub fans.
That's good. So, and then you went to Naperville Central High School?
Went to Naperville Central High School, theoretically, yes.
Yes, theoretically.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you
the best 8 years of my life.
There you go. Then you graduated, and now, especially most Naperville kids are off to college, and you tried that, and then what happened?
I did.
With that?
I wanted to go to U of I, and I had a 27 ACT, had a 3.2 grade point average, applied for, business, and they came back and they denied me, and I was 18 years old, of course, or 17 at the time, and said, screw them, I'm not going to go there, I'll go somewhere else. And my counselor at the time said, just apply under agricultural economics and change your major. I'm like, they don't want me, I think, I'm not going. So I decided to go to Eastern Illinois, which was basically the #1 school for Naperville Central, and roomed with a very good friend of mine, who's still a very good friend of mine today, and was down at Eastern for about 6 weeks, and realized fairly quickly that I was more interested in the social aspects of that time of my life than the studious aspects of that time of my life.
I can't imagine that.
Strange. Especially hard to explain that to your kids. That's the tough part. So when I came back at Christmas time and told my mother and father that I wasn't going back to Eastern Illinois, they said, fine, that's good, you're going to go to sea. And I had worked at the Naperville Sun in high school, last 2 years of high school, so I had a job there. And my dad said, as long as you go to school, you can live in this house. And I did. I went to COD for about a month, and I came home and said, Dad, I'm working from 6 a.m. until 4, and then going to school and going back sometimes. That's back when the Naperville Sun came out on Wednesdays and Fridays, so I'd go back at midnight on Tuesdays and midnight on Thursdays and work till 2 in the morning to help get the paper out. And just burning at both ends and had no time for anything. Not that there was anybody around, but told my dad that, and he said, okay, well, no kid of mine is going to live in this house and not to go to college. You need to get out. I said, okay, when do I need to move? He's like, today would be good. So I stayed that night in my car and went to work the next day at the Naperville Sun and started walking around the shop and talked to the general manager and said, so I moved in a boarding house over on Spring Street for a short period of time, and eventually found some roommates that I worked with at the Naperville Sun. One was 23 and one was 25. Jimmy Kotz and Ray Schlegel, still good friends today, but we had Ray and Jimmy's, the first name in modern bachelor living, and we had some parties back in those days. I was 18 and I was living with some guys that were 23 and 25, so obviously when my friends came home from college, where could they go in Naperville? It was just like college. That would be Ray and Jimmy's over on Whispering Hill Drive, and so that was the start of kind of my independence, and my father and I kind of had some missing years. We really weren't that close at that moment in time, but he was doing what he felt needed to be done, and he was trying to scare me straight. Well, I worked at the Naperville Sun at the time. At the time, the Naperville Chamber was housed in the same building the Naperville Sun was, and they had a membership drive. And Cleo Keller was in charge of the display advertising department, and asked me if I wanted to be, they're putting a team together, do you want to be on the team? I said, sure, okay, fine, I'll do that. What do I do? They said, well, they're going to give you a list of names, you call them and ask them to join the chamber. Oh, okay. So they gave me a phone, gave me a list of names. Well, lo and behold, I won the membership drive at the age of 18 or 19, and it was kind of funny, and at the end of that event, that chamber drive, they had an after hours, which is they call them now. They had an after hours, and we're there, and there was a bar, and I walked up and I grabbed a beer, and nobody carded me. And I'm like, hey, this chamber thing's kind of
Kinda
cool.
cool.
So that's kind of why I got really involved in the chamber at a young age. But actually, it was really interesting because I met a lot of business folks, older people, obviously, but they were very accepting of me, and I found a liking to it, and found I had some skills with communicating and connecting with people. Out of that, I got involved with the Exchange Club and the very first Rib Fest. Ken Schneff was the business editor of the Naperville Sun. He was a member of the club and said, hey, we're doing this Rib Fest thing.
You got nothing else to do?
Nothing else to do. And I was, I was at that time I was probably 21, 22, young kid, and got involved. And Rib Fest was on Father's Day weekend at Rotary Hill, and I sat there and took money, $3 to get in. It was a lot of fun. Got to know a lot of people, and got to know some folks that are still involved. Anne Marie Seawick and the Ericksons and the other folks that are still involved with Rib Fest today. But got to know them in that way, and then realized I kind of had a passion for volunteering. So it wasn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me pause the Ray button here for a second. Tell me what you did at the Sun.
At the Naperville Sun, let's see, I was hired probably as what they would call a coffee boy or an errand boy or whatever you want to call it. I did everything from take out the garbage to make the coffee to run to the Eagle up here because Mr. White had this certain kind of cream he needed to get, and they only sold it there was an Eagle up here that I used to go to. So I did that. I did all sorts of errands for them. And then eventually I got worked in the darkroom and started working in the print shop as a copy control and did a lot of just different stuff. At the end of my career at the Naperville Sun, I was working in something called copy control, which was the department where the salespeople would go out and sell an ad to NCTV, and you would buy an ad to go on the Naperville Sun. And this was before computers were what they are today.
Right, yeah.
So you needed to have somebody create that ad. So the advertising salesman would sit down with you and say, okay, what do you want? And they'd write it out. And then they'd come bring it to me, and I would get it to my typesetter, our typesetter, and get the ad laid out, designed, proofread out to the customer. They'd get it approved. Once it got approved, we made sure it went in all the publications that we had. So that was kind of also a tease into my printing life. I did that for quite a while, enjoyed it, and then tried my hand at sales. Ran some sales for the Bolingbrook Sun for a while. Enjoyed that very much, was very good at it, and had some good sales performance. However, the department that I had been running was copy control, which controlled all of the newspapers, wasn't really doing well without me. So they asked me to come back inside and do that, which, at the age of 23, I'm like, I kind of really like outside. Now I'm going to be confined to a desk again. So that was kind of my niche, my thinking of, okay, I'm going to have to do something different. So. But it was I loved the years of the Naperville Sun. Some of the great people I worked with, some great friends, a lot of Naperville moms from my buddies in high school that worked there, and it was a special place when it was downtown Naperville, very special place.
And from that training, you kind of grew a love of printing and understanding and recognized the business possibilities on the private side. Is that how this?
Oh God, that sounds good, but there's no way I was thinking that at that age.
No,
but yes, I'm
right,
sure. Yes,
but you bought your own printing.
Yes,
you
yes,
bought this
yes.
place that we're
Right.
sitting at, Minuteman Press, Naperville.
Correct. Well, actually, I bought in with my partner. My
Partners.
partners owned it, and Kevin and John bought it in 1988.
Okay.
I joined them in 1990.
Okay.
This place has been here since 1980. It was owned by Fred and Mary Ellen Mills. They were a retired couple. They worked for Sears. Back then, I-5 was the exchange that came off here, and Naple Road was the only way into town, so you drove right past the front of our building. So they ran it for 8 years, and then they sold it to Kevin and John. Kevin was the operations guy, still is today, and John was more of an investor. Well, I knew John from playing basketball at Lincoln Junior High on Monday nights, or North Star College on Sunday nights, and we'd go down to features after basketball games, or Lantern, and I'd walk in, and everybody go, Ray, how are you doing? And John's like, do you know everybody? And I don't know, I do a lot of stuff with the JCs and Exchange Club, so yeah, I know a lot of people. He's like, oh, you should come work for us. I said, yeah, I'm not really going to do that. So every once in a while we'd run into each other, we'd have the conversation. I said, well, I don't want to come work for you, but I'll work with you as long as I can buy in to be a part owner. And so one Saturday afternoon, Kevin and John met at an undisclosed location. And many beers later, and cocktail napkin, I went home and told my wife, I'm quitting my job and I need to go find $50,000 so I can buy into this company. And that's kind of how that worked. So,
Well, and so when did you meet Paula, and how did that happen?
I met Paula
'Cause that sounds
probably my fourth day down in Charleston, Illinois. She graduated from Naperville Central in 1981. I did not know her.
Okay.
She graduated the same year as my sister. And I graduated in 83, so I didn't know her. She happened to be a friend of a girlfriend's sister that I knew, kind of. But she ran in a circle that I became very, very good friends with. So that was the one great thing about Eastern Illinois is I met Paula. So that was the good thing I can hang my hat on. She stayed on, continued, and graduated, got a degree in marketing communications, and
came back to
Ray and Jimmy's quite often, yes. And,
Yes,
yeah.
right.
So then at some point, I think around 24, 23, she was living up in Hoffman Estates. I had moved back home because I had gone to Dad and Mom and said, okay, I'm done with my wayward ways, and I had had some issues with some substances, and it was time for me to get back home and get my feet straight on the ground again. And Dad was okay with that because I had done some really good things and I still had some issues. So I moved back home and was living at home and going to work. And Paul and I would get together for a movie every once in a while. And then we were just really good friends. And all of a sudden we said, well, this kind of maybe has some potential. So now we're sitting 25 years later and 3 kids and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, seems that was a good bet there.
Yeah. It worked out well. One of my better ones, I have to say.
Okay, there you go. Well, and when you look back at it, most of us are graduating college at 22, 23, and by that time you had some experience with the Sun. You had Party Central at at the place, and then we're thinking about marriage. So
well, I was at 23. I was running a department of 5 people, and it was a very important department. So of course, at the time, I didn't know it. I was just doing my job. I loved it. It was fun. I have a pretty cavalier attitude toward a lot of, and people think that's a bad thing. I kind of like to keep it light. Hard work's important. Got to make it light. I love that experience working in the Naperville Sun. Lots of different people, lots of different things. So that was good. And in my personal life, as I continued to progress, and back then, people did get married earlier. Now I think people do get married later, and whatever works for you. So we waited to have kids, so it's not like we were anxious to get married and start a family. It was the right time.
Right. Well, because you're right. Most people are really getting started in that first job, and you had been through many of them. And then everyone knows you as Mr. Volunteer Extraordinaire, and you mentioned it, how that kind of engaged you as a youth. There was a story I read about you at the Y with little friends. Can you tell me about that? I love that story.
That's a great story because that goes back to Naperville Central. That goes back to Dave Dillon, who, if you talk about who's the teacher that won, I've got lots of them. Dave's one of them. He was also a football coach and just a mean kind of had that, offensive line, defensive line coach, but teddy bear. Absolutely. Sorry, Dave. But he had a class called American Problems. And in that class, you took it as a sophomore or junior in high school, really was very, I think at that time, cutting edge because he would bring in, a Nazi empathizer and a Holocaust survivor on the same day to class and chat. And we're 15, 16, 17 years old going, wow, this is crazy. And then he'd bring in a transgendered person and somebody who was right-wing, and just very weird stuff. But part of the requirements of that class was you needed to go out and volunteer in the community. You needed to do something. So a couple of us, Jim Sonnefeld and Lloyd Trussell and I said, ooh, this looks cool. Let's go swim at the YMCA and get a swim. Not knowing that we had to teach kids from Little Friends how to swim. So first day we go there, and we didn't know what we were getting into, and we was like, oh, let's go. It'll be great. We're going to take regular school. Naperville Central didn't have a pool, so we got to go swim at the YMCA at lunchtime, and we were all assigned a student or a client, a partner from Little Friends. Mine was Paul. I don't remember how old he was. He was older than I was, but his mentality, obviously he had some, I don't know if he's Down syndrome or some type of birth defect of some sort, and but he was the first day was scared to death. Wouldn't go near the water. By the end of the semester, he'd ray and jump in the water, and I loved it, and it was really cool. And I felt at that time that really, wow, there's something there with Little Friends and the YMCA and volunteering, and that was just kind of a little nugget that was buried in me somewhere. And then when I got involved with the Exchange Club and JC's, it kind of blossomed. So.
Yeah, well, you've been the volunteer. What do you think volunteerism gives to a person? I mean, you are very gregarious and social, so that fills that need. But there's something more that strikes you.
It's a basic desire to give back, and we all have gifts, and people use them differently, and I think that if you have a gift to be able to share, you should do that. Volunteering, to me, gives you an opportunity to take some risks, especially at a young age for me, and the reason why I love the JCs so much is because it really is leadership development through community service. You get to take a risk on running the haunted house or Easter egg hunt or food baskets or whatever, and if it doesn't work out, at the end of the day, is that really a terrible thing? No, because there's a lot of people that support you, but you as an individual get to grow and learn. And then I just found out that that's where I met really good people. Some of my best friends today are the ones that I met when I was 23, 24 years old in the JCs, and we're still getting together quite often. So, it feeds something in my soul, I guess.
Well, I think it develops good skills. I mean, you put on a lot of your stuff that you graduated from the School of Hard Knocks, and I think it makes me smile.
I'm glad, yeah.
But I also think that volunteerism built some skills in that networking, contacting for you that you may not have gotten sitting in a college classroom.
Correct, and I was very familiar with the Naperville Police Department when I was 17 and 18 years old, mostly from the back seat. So yeah, there were some issues that I had, and I needed to deal with them. And through volunteering, I think it gave me some opportunities to see both sides of that. And now I have a great relationship with the police department. Not that I've not ever been in the back seat again. But it really did give me some opportunities to grow, and it really was something that, and again, I looked at it as I met people in the business world. People would say, well, where'd you go to school? You know, and you'd talk about that. Well, then pretty soon when I had a reputation of being involved in Exchange Club and JCs, they didn't ask where I went to school. Oh yeah,
Right.
you ran RIF, you're doing that. So it kind of satisfied that need for me, I
Right.
guess. So I don't know if I was trying to compensate for my lack of a college education. I think college is extremely critical in higher education and all that stuff. But for me at that time in my life, it just didn't fit.
Right. Well, and I give you a lot of credit for making that decision and not wasting mom and dad's money. Yeah.
You can call it that.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
so sure the decision was totally mine, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure maybe the college had a little.
Yeah.
little
Well,
insight.
my dad was the youngest in his family as well, and the first one to leave the farm, and he worked hard for all of his kids to go to college, and I was the one that didn't.
Yeah.
And that really bothered him. So that was something that he wanted to have a living that he could afford to send his kids to college, and
Right.
he did. And
He
I
did.
chose not to, and that really kind of bothered him. So.
Right. Well, yeah, because I think you probably didn't think at the time you were weighing that.
Right. Thankfully, we had many years post that era to get back together and
Yeah, that's
satisfy that. So.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad that worked out. Now you went on, and when we're talking about leadership, young leadership,
Mm-hmm.
you credit the JCs, but there was a guy named John Stevens who recognized you
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and some of your
Dave Kelch, yeah,
some of your pals,
yeah.
and got you involved with.
The Heritage Society.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that and why you listened to John and who set John up first. Tell me who was John and why was he important.
John Stevens, wow. I mean, his name's on a building at a hospital. John and Kay unfortunately just passed away this
Yes.
year. Wonderful people. Truly a giver. Truly somebody that was a planner. He was very much an organizational kind of a guy. And when he got involved with the Heritage Society, I think he was president. And
was.
he looked around, and Peggy Frank was obviously they had the staff, and it was growing. This is the mid '90s, and I think I'd already been president of the JCs. I'd been president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'd been on the Planning Commission, so I had some network of
You had a little
some
experience,
credibility,
yeah,
I guess.
yes.
Let's call it that way. And John came in this office and sat down and called and said, "Can I come and meet you?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh." And I mean, I knew him. I didn't know him that well.
And he worked for Harris Bank, am I right?
Worked for Harris Bank,
Right.
and I think by the time I knew him that well, he was retired.
Okay.
But
Could've been.
had a great family and just came in and sat down. He's like, you know what? I watched you, and Dave Kelch, and I want to get you guys. We need some young leadership. It's time to revitalize what's going on with the Heritage Society, because at the time there was kind of a blend of a lot of people that were volunteers there, and he wanted more business people that could help raise the profile and the funding opportunities for that, and be more managers from that standpoint versus, and not that we wouldn't go volunteer, but that was kind of one of those aha moments for me that said, wow, that's kind of pretty cool to be asked to do that. And I was very touched by John to do that. And unfortunately, Dave and I got on the board, and he shortly thereafter passed away, which was not in our plans whatsoever. And Dave took over as the president of the Heritage Society, and still I am still involved as well. But again, a great organization. But it really, I've always been kind of a history guy anyway. But really gave me a great touch of the fabric of Naperville. So, and it was great people that were involved there. And again, when it didn't matter what age you were, where you came from. When you walked in the door and you rolled up your sleeves to work together, that's what you did. So that was something I learned there.
Right, and how did that influence your business side? I mean, because Minuteman Press is growing.
Right.
You're growing, and you add layers to it.
Right. Well, Minuteman Press, again, when I joined in 1990, by 1982 or so, they were growing. But in 1992, we really started to grow. And obviously, right time, right place.
Right.
Naperville, thank God, what a wonderful community. We were growing very well at that time. A lot of business opportunities out here. So we were filling a need. Things were different back then. People actually had to go to print shops to get stuff printed. Now they don't need to as much. But, that was something that as we grew, we acquired more properties, more businesses. So I think our first acquisition was Scott Press in Downers Grove in 1993. And then we bought Minuteman Press in St. Charles in 95, Minuteman Press Carroll Stream in 96. In 93, I think we bought Diener & Associates, which was a commercial printing facility. So we had clients that would come to us and say, can you, let's work on this job. Can you get this printed? I'm like, well, I don't have the equipment to print that.
Right.
I'm like, well, can you find somebody to print it? Because I trust you, and go figure out, give me a price. And like, yeah, I did. So working with Kevin, my operations partner, and that said, okay, look, here's what we can do. We can get this job. We make a little bit of money. We keep our client happy. We're going to grow with them. That was fine. That worked out great. And then as we continued to grow on the commercial side, we realized we should probably acquire some equipment. So we bought a company in Elgin. Kevin commuted for 2 years.
Wow.
And then we brought it down to Naperville. It was on Quincy Avenue for probably 6 or 7 years. And then it moved over to Lisle, and now it's in Lombard. So we continue to
Just
move.
to move it around.
Well, sometimes when you buy printing companies
Sure.
with big pieces of equipment, it's more cost effective to move there than to move the equipment to where you are.
Yeah, sure.
So, and with existing leases and those type of things. So, but yeah, we kind of grew with the communities, and we picked St. Charles and Carroll Stream as other ones that were kind of like Naperville. It's difficult to find really good people to run shops. That's the problem. I mean, you still need good people to do it. So we've had some trials and errors along the way, and I think right now we're the best we've been in a long time. We've got a great team ready to go forward. So
It's exciting.
it is very exciting. Yeah.
Right, because I mean, you talked about, things have changed in the printing era, and that's really evolved, but you've managed to evolve with them.
We have. And again, that's something that, from the business side, I rely on my partners quite a bit, and we do a lot of industry communication. But some people that we've hired, Brian Scott, who went to North Center College, cross-country runner, JC, ran the, I mean, again, I kind of mind the JC pipeline as I look for young leaders that are coming up, because if they can do that in their volunteer world, think how well they're going to work for you when you're getting paid. And I've been blessed to get people like Courtney Brown and Rosemary Bresky-Garvey and Brian Scott all through that avenue. Brian, with his leadership and pushing, has got us into a great position now with Blooming Color. So things are really looking up for us. It's an exciting time.
Well, you mentioned North Central College. Now, a similar approach was made with North Central College, and you looking
Correct.
for and Mr. Kelsch.
Yes.
Yeah,
Again, we're connected at the hip sometimes, a lot of stuff.
Tell me a little bit about that.
That was, again, probably still is the greatest honor of my life, I think, is being a trustee at North Central College. Lots of different reasons. One, great history, phenomenal academic standards, great professors like Liz Spencer are there. It's unbelievable. But as I, growing up, being born in Champaign, I lived next door to the mayor of Champaign, and on our street was a head basketball coach and the athletic director. So U of I was a big part when I was a little kid.
Right.
Spent a lot of time at the college. So being a townie, I guess,
Yeah.
North Center College was always kind of my college. So even in high school, we'd go play basketball there. That was the first place I blew my knee out and had to have surgery, was at North Center College. But as we continued to get involved in the community, Dave and I both did a lot. And we're very good friends, and I respect him immensely. And we talk about, all right, what are you doing on this board? What are you doing on this board? And kind of divide and conquer. Well, Hal Wilde, who was the president, at the conclusion of a Naperville Development Partnership board meeting, said, hey, can I talk to you guys for a minute? Uh-oh, he's going to ask for money. Well, yeah, he's going to ask for money and the rest of your life. So he came to us and said, we're really looking to get some younger people on our board, and we would be honored if you guys would consider that. We know you're both not alums, but you're part of the Naperville fabric going forward of the young leadership that we're looking to try to connect with. So again, obviously completely honored and blown away. And I came in there, I think 2000 was the year we were elected, and it was really a very scary time. I mean, it was scary for me. Again, I don't know why, but it was. Walk into a boardroom and the board trustees overseeing a college, which I never could finish. So it was kind of weird for me. So I kept saying to Hal, I said, what do I know? I don't even have a college degree. I mean, what do I know? So after about 8 years of that, I got tired of hearing it. So the board got together and gave me an honorary degree from North Center College. So,
Yes, in 2010.
2010, yes.
Yes, we were there
Yes.
with our cameras.
Yes.
And I thought it was very cool because you were a line marshal, so you were helping everybody keep in line, and you were the last one across the stage.
Yeah.
Were you expecting it that day?
Yes, I knew I was coming that day. That day I did know. My mom was here, my family was
Good.
here, so I did know that. It was what I didn't expect was when they asked me to leave the room at a trustee meeting earlier that fall, and I came back in and they're all applauding. I'm like, what? She's like, well, Hal's like, you can never say you don't have a college education anymore. So what are you talking about? So it was very touching, and for Hal and Rick, very touching. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great.
Yeah.
So,
But again, that was part of, that's something looking at North Center College and what they've done for their plans and how they plan. I mean, they've been around for 150 years, and they're going to be around for 150 more. And the stories of how they connect Naperville together to the world, it's just unbelievable. And now we just hired a new president, and how we got him is a great story. It's just, there's some really great stories of how the college and Naperville have grown together, and they're intertwined. It's a great, great story, and I'm honored to be a trustee.
well, it is a gown-in-town relationship, and it's working well. And Hal Wilde with the Naperville Development Partnership really kind of help that go.
Right. That was the Naperville Development Partnership was started in 1996. I was coming off my year as being the president. Back then, the volunteer was called the president of the the Chamber of Commerce. So we'd hired Mike Scarr after Jack Romine was there for 17 years. And Mike came in and said, no, I'm the president. You're the chairman of the board. Okay, we'll do that. That's fine. And there were some permitting issues back in those days with the city of Naperville. So we were still in the middle of a pretty heavy boom time, 95. But we were starting to hear rumblings from the development communities that, we're going past Naperville. We're going out to Plainfield and Oswego because it's just too hard to get permits. And it's just... So the business community, at the time, we had an economic development committee of the Chamber of Commerce. We were very concerned about that, and through those conversations, and Ron Miller was our city manager at the time, and Mike Scarr, and lots of people put together this idea of a joint venture between the city of Naperville and the private sector to create an economic development corporation that would then be able to advocate for pro-growth, and also when there was challenges from the business side or development side, go in there and advocate on behalf of that side too. And we chose Hal Wilde as our first president because he was, kind of a statesman, I guess, is the best way I can describe it, and just kind of that old fatherly type figure.
Well, I think he appreciated too that he came from Beloit College, and Beloit's town wasn't what it needed to be from Beloit College, and he understood that downtown relationship
very much so.
Very much.
Very much
when both thrive. When one thrives, the other, and vice versa.
And Hal's career was more than just being a college president. He was
right.
the insurance director in Wisconsin, and a business guy, an entrepreneur, and just a brilliant man. But when they were having this conversation about what does an economic development company look like, we brought in Christine Jeffries, who was the economic development person from Geneva, to a meeting at Naperville Country Club, and there was probably, 20 of us there and had the meeting. And she came in and talked to us, and she leaves and said, God, no, so now we need to go find somebody. Why don't we just hire her?
Right.
And that's how we got Christine. So, so that there was a lot of, the NDP is central to a lot of stuff that I do, and Dave does, and it's great for our community, and Christine does a great job. But it really started with Hal's leadership.
Right, well, and it really just came out of some good conversation.
Well, and there's a need for it.
Right.
There really was a need for it. I mean, you look at it now, you can even, we had a meeting at that then it was a Holiday Inn Select, where we actually invited the real estate and developer community and city staff and said, okay, guys, here's the deal. Have at it, be honest, no penalties. So it was pretty frank conversation. It was pretty ugly when people were talking about, 6 weeks to get permits and doing all this, and just the costs associated with that, which city staff didn't understand. So thankfully, we had a city staff at the time that was willing to listen and work together, and I think they do a great job.
Right, well, I think Ted came out of that.
Yep, they did.
Transportation,
Yep.
engineering and development.
That's right.
That's right.
John Seneca.
So this sounds like just a tremendous amount of work. And during this time period, you've married Paula, and you did have 3 children.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. And I remember interviewing you somewhere along the line when you were squeezing us in between something, and then you had to go read at
one of the schools, yeah.
One of the schools.
Yeah. Well, that's probably from Naperville Education Foundation.
Yes.
I was honored to be the president of that organization at one point, and it's a great organization. And one of the things we used to do was go read to the kids, and it's something I loved doing. I haven't done that in a while. I probably should do that, but it was a lot of fun. And my kids are extremely important to me. Go back to the Heritage Society. One of the reasons I had to resign from the Heritage Society was my son and daughter were at that age where their activities were after school. And they were at night, and the Heritage Society meetings always were at night. And I think my son was playing baseball, and he wanted me to coach, and I couldn't because I had a board commitment. And I said, that's wrong. That's just wrong. So I got off that board and said, I still love you, I'm still going to support you, but I got to take care of them. It's a short window, and now they're off in college. So, yes, my oldest daughter, Sarah, is a senior at Indiana University. JR is out at Iowa going to school as a sophomore, and Emily is starting her freshman year at Naperville Central. So, Paula, it keeps us all busy. So
it does, yes. Yes, it keeps them all driving your cars, too. So.
Yes.
Almost driving. The freshman's not quite driving. So.
No, thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah.
So I was really touched by the fact that you had to go run off and read, and that was important to do that, and the balancing of life, because I think it's one thing we all struggle with.
It is the biggest challenge, especially in this wonderful community that is Naperville. It will suck you up and spit you out if you let it. But you got to find balance. You got to say no sometimes, and I have a really hard time saying no. But I'm getting better at it.
We'll have to have a 12-point.
12-point. How do you say no?
Yeah, because I don't say no very well either.
It's difficult, but as long as you can share the balances and the reasons why, I mean, who can anybody get mad at you because I need to go spend time with my kids?
No,
I mean, you can't.
right?
So,
No, and that's true.
and by the way, if they had a problem with that, then they were wrong for me in the first place because they
Right.
certainly don't understand who I am. So,
Right.
but yeah, it really is creating that balance. And Paula, God bless her, she understood when we got married that I was very involved in the community. I mean, she had seen me at my worst. 19, 20, 21, and seen what my community involvement had done for me. So
Right.
she was, I get it. You understand, honey, this is what I do. I have, one, it's good for the business. Two, it's good for me personally. And three, it's kind of my addiction. So.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I think Paul has done a wonderful job.
She's a rock star. She's a rock star,
she's-
yeah.
Now, you've done a lot of, you're just a fun personality, and you take an idea and you seize it, and one of the things that comes to mind is that bobblehead.
Oh, God. Yes, the Mayor Pradle bobblehead.
Yes, it's resurfacing a little bit as the mayor is getting
I
ready.
have a box somewhere around here still. So, yeah.
Yes, I think it could be some really, you get even more money for
That
it.
was something that came out of, I don't know what, whether it was he had been named the hottest mayor or what was going on. And I know Gary and Carol, Gary and Ann, George's children, their sons, Nick and Zach, are my kids' age, live in our same subdivision. So we'd see them at soccer and baseball. So I know the family pretty well. And Carol's, as we all know, is a rock star. So when I had this idea, I did some research and said, okay, I can make a bobblehead. I can do a custom bobblehead. Can I do a couple thousand? What's going to cost me? I started figuring all that stuff out. I said, okay, I got that done. I said, I know if I ask the mayor, you know what he's going to say? Oh, yeah! Yes, let's do it. And I said, you know what? I better check with the family first. So I called Gary and Carol, and we went to Neighbors Bar and Grill and for lunch. And I said, why don't we have a beer? And like, what? I said, why don't we have a beer? Let's have a beer and a burger. Okay. So we're sitting there, and I said, I got this idea, but I wanted to touch base with you guys first before I do it. And if you say no, no harm, no foul, I'll shelve it. We'll never do it. And I said, I want to make a bobblehead of your father, and all the money will go to charity. I'll pay for them. I'll underwrite the cost of the production of it, and we're going to sell them. And you guys can help me come up with the charities. And they're like, oh my God, that's great. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. So that's kind of how it happened. So we did that, and I think we ended up making about $29,000 on those. And the money went to the Millennium Carillon Foundation, Everett Cancer Center, and the YMCA, I think, were the three.
Yeah, right, the Safe and Sound
Safe and
program.
Sound, yeah. So those were three, charities that were important to the Pradle family. It had nothing to do with me. It was, guys, I'll do this. This is great. I mean, I think it was obviously past 2000s. We were still trying to raise money for the Carillon at the time, and that was a great choice. So we've had some fun with them. He has had a blast with them. It's something that I do see them when I go to people's offices, and I just kind of chuckle to myself and don't tell them a story about where they all came from and how they, oh yeah, I got the Mayor Pradle bobblehead. And I say, I got boxes of them. So, but he signs them, and I think he likes it. And it was a decent likeness. I actually had to go take pictures of him and have him pose. It was kind of funny. But yeah, that was. I really don't know how I came up with that idea. It was one of those weird things.
How did you first get connected with George?
Oh God, Safe and Sound.
I was going to say Officer Friendly.
Officer Friendly. When I was president of the JCs in '92, Lori Hornick was president of the Junior Women's Club, and they were doing Safety Town in schools all across Naperville, and they wanted to build a permanent facility. And Lori called me and said, you know what? Junior Women's are great at running this. We're not good at raising money. JCs are good at raising money. So we had a couple meetings, and I said, all right, I'll help. So we formed a Safety Town Commission. I said, so I called Ken Coranda, called Bill Brestel, called Jim Mosier, and got a small committee together to see, is this something we can do to build a safety town? Of course, we had to have Mayor Pradle involved at the time, George Pradle. That's kind of how it started. That's why I met him, was really through that. He never arrested me.
Yes, because you never saw the backseat of the pace car.
He wasn't a type of a cop, I don't think.
He probably talked to you first and take you home.
And I was one of the folks that went and chatted with him when he was a policeman and said, maybe you ought to consider running for mayor. And it's been a great run for him. So,
yeah, 20 years.
Yeah. Long time.
Long time. Many people often have tossed out the idea for you to run to mayor.
Yes, many people have tossed that out.
Yes.
They can keep tossing that
They
out.
can
Just
keep tossing. Yeah.
You know what? My wife and I have an agreement that's not going to happen. I'm honored and touched that people think that I have that skill set, and I work very closely with all of our elected officials, both here locally and statewide and federally as well, because it's important for business and through the chamber and everything else. But I like kind of being more on the background side, and I can advocate and discuss rather than argue with each of them independently, collectively, together. and that way I can try to influence more votes than just one. So, and you know what? I think we've got some good choices. Thankfully, Naperville's been blessed with our elected officials. We really have been, both on school districts and park boards and all of them, that we've had pretty decent runs. We haven't had some of the issues that some of the other communities have had, and thankfully that's the case. So, but yes, I'm honored and flattered that they think that. My kids think it would be great. My wife says no.
Yeah.
So.
Well, talking about public officials, and Naperville gives them the respect that many other communities don't.
True, I agree.
When they're recognized everywhere, and you can go to another community and they're like, who?
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah. Well, there used to be we joke about this. That it used to be, if you can name all your park board officials, that's probably a bad thing. If you name all your school board, that's probably a bad thing. That means you're paying too much. So that means there's something going on that's got your attention on that. And thankful for all those people that do that, because they do it because they feel it's the right thing to do. They want to give back. So I'm just not I guess I'm just not an electable kind of guy. I don't know.
I know. I respect you.
My closet, my skeletons have closets. Not only do I have skeletons
in
my closet, my skeletons.
Well, and in today's media, you bet there's a lot that you have to be very public about, and that the whole social media aspect of it, and
Thank God that wasn't around 25 years ago.
I think about you, and it's on my list because you are so social, and even you've done a great job. You are social on social media. What is your take on all of it, and what do you think about it?
It runs hot and cold with me. It's a great way to connect with people. It's critical to business people to be involved. It's interesting now as you watch the evolution of the medias, whether it be social medias and Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest and Instagram, all of them. Trying to keep up with the things my kids are on is hard to do. And now my 14-year-old daughter, she's like, Dad, I don't text anymore. That's too mainstream. I only reply to direct message tweets. Huh? How am I going to market to you? How am I going to market to people that only do closed loop conversation?
Right.
So it's something from a marketing standpoint. It really gets my juices going to talk about how can we make that work. And watching what social media, the power of social media really is incredible. I mean, look at the Ice Bucket Challenge is a great example of how incredibly powerful the tool is. Locally, it's been very great for events, every type of event. Loaves and Fishes has events. They post on social media. People go take it, they share it, and it's a great way to do that. It's easy, and it's user content, user provided content. From the business standpoint, you have to be. If your business isn't there, you should be. Then you have to monitor it. You have to monitor it because if people say something bad about Minuteman Press or Blooming Color or Macklin Group, one, you don't delete it. You got to go back and stand up and respond to it and do that and be monitoring it all the time. So and you have to be active on it. So I've been accused of being too social.
Too social on social media?
No, that's not possible.
I don't think it is.
No, it is funny, but I enjoy it. I do.
And what do you think? Being that you are social and you have no problem talking to anybody, that's not a fear of your. So, but what do you think about the argument that social media is really much more not social than social because it takes out that
Agreed. And again, that is the challenge when you go to dinner and you see people like this across the table from each other, and I'm guilty of that as well, but I'm not usually doing so. I'm checking whatever. But I think that's a big challenge, and putting down phones and having conversations and doing videos is very, very important. And I do think that we see that, and I talk to my kids about that and talk to students about that, saying, got to make sure you can figure out how to interact with people in a real-time fashion. There is the cyberbullying is a real problem. That's something we need to monitor. Parents should be monitoring. Again, did I get on social media to follow my kids? Maybe a little bit.
They probably nudged you. They probably showed you what it was, and then.
Oh heck no! They didn't want me to know about it at all. It was. I think a funny quick story about that. One time when Facebook was really first coming out, I think Sarah might have been sophomore or something like that. So 10 years ago, and that's when adults were getting on Facebook. So my sister calls me from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Oh my God, did you see what's on Sarah's Facebook? And somebody had said the word bitch. I'm probably not supposed to say that word.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So that was on, and she was beside herself. I said, Cindy, they're 14-year-old kids. Get off, relax. It's okay, because she's calling. So you got to take measures of it, and you got to chill a little bit. But kids are always going to find ways to communicate without our eyes watching. That's just the way it's going to be. But it is something that it's an interesting phenomenon as we see as it evolves, and talk about the size of business that it's done and how it's impacted businesses. It really has. I mean, it's affected the business we're in because people can do social media and email rather than sending out direct mail or newsletters and those type of things. What we do find in studies will show you that there's still very much value in print because print has a shelf life,
right,
a little bit more than some of the.
It's
what's the first thing you do in the morning when you check your email? Delete, 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 delete. I don't do that with printed stuff. So,
right.
But it's still, the social media it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be real interesting to see. My daughter's 14. To see how she does it. She hasn't been on her Facebook page in probably 2 years. So, and again, she wasn't supposed to have one anyway, but whatever. So
that she has it.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about that social media and that, what do you think for the future of printing? Because that's something, when you look in the future, where do you see?
Well, I think that's really one of the driving factors of why we just rebranded the company and why we're going in a little bit of different direction than a Minuteman Press typical shop is. A Minuteman Press typical shop is it's a copy shop, it's a printing company, it's a fairly small business, but what we found is that the retail aspect of that really isn't there as much anymore. So commercial printing is really where it's at. We have got some great opportunities, some very large companies that we do a lot of work for. So we're hiring more commercial salespeople to go out and find true printing opportunities versus the quick print. Because this model still isn't, it still will work for a lot of people, but I want to grow a very large company. I want to employ a lot of people. I want to be able to donate a lot of money to charities. To do that, you got to have a big business. Well, what we were doing on the Minuteman side, we were seeing sales decline. We're seeing the walk-in traffic decline. We're seeing the retail sales decline. And we were starting to realize which clients, the ones that actually do print, looking at vertical markets, doing those type of things, I still think there's a very big future for it. And I obviously read a lot of trade publications talking about, it was email the death of direct mail. Absolutely not. When you go to your marketing budget, you look at it, you got to spend money on a little bit of everything. What you have to do is measure it. You have to measure your return on investment. And I can tell you that when you do direct mail postcards, if you follow up and you do all the things you need to do, far more effective than an email. Now, is that going to be for everybody? No, the budget isn't for everybody. But there's a lot of different things you can do. So I think printing has a very bright future, and I know Blooming Color does.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And when you think about your goals of wanting to be a big company and you employ people, what would you characterize your leadership style as?
That's a good question. Enthusiastic? I don't know.
Okay. What type of leader are you?
I tend to let people do their job. I'm kind of a self-directed learner, self-directed leader.
Yeah.
I kind of hope that the people that I interview, when we hire them, it's that same person. Oftentimes, when you find out 2 weeks after you interview them and you hire them, what happened to the person you interviewed? Because it's not you. So I think being very slow to hire and quick to fire is a very good analogy I've heard. But I think my leadership style is very relaxed. I'm not a yeller, not a screamer. I'm just not that way. I just hope and expect people to do the job that we've laid out for them to do, and I'll support them any way that I possibly can. So I wouldn't even consider that a leadership style. That's just the way that I am. It's something. We are in the mistake business. Mistakes happen. That's just the nature of the business. Now, do I get angry on occasion? Absolutely. Do my employees get angrier when they make mistakes? Yep, because they know I get disappointed. So I'm just not a yeller, so I don't know what you'd call that, but I really want people to kind of find their own pace, find their own way to do it. We can measure an employee's effectiveness in terms of what jobs they're doing, all those different types of things, but they got to find their niche and they got to find their way to grow within the company. And we'll give them lots of opportunities. So, thankfully I've got guys like Brian and Rosemarie that not only are leaders in this company, but they're also leaders in the community. And that's when I really love that, because if you can, again, I go back to, you look at people who do volunteer work and they do it really well, and they're passionate about it and committed to it. Think about if you gave them a paycheck to do something. Then you think you're going to get something pretty good, because if that's what they do with their free time, imagine what they do when they're working. And most of us are workaholics that way. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And it makes me think about the up and coming generation, the generation known as the millennials, and wondering. A lot of conversation that they want balance and that maybe they're not as much volunteer oriented. Do you believe it? Do you care?
I care. I believe it today and maybe not tomorrow. Okay. I don't think I believed it yesterday. You can't characterize an entire generation. You can't. I think I'm the last of the baby boomers, supposedly. I don't know. But look at the millennials, and yes, what they do want, the one thing I have seen is money is not nearly as important to them at certain times of their life. At certain times of their lives, money's not that important. It's the job, it's the experience. I want to live in an urban environment, a cool, hip place to work.
Right.
I want to be able to go out and kick off and go to a Cubs game on a Tuesday afternoon because they're playing the Cardinals.
All right, you're on.
Got them both in there.
Let's go.
I'm good. But I have great hope for this next generation. And I look at my daughter who's 21 and the volunteer work she's done. My son, all my kids do. And I think they've seen that because they see Paul and I do it.
Right.
And they see the joy and satisfaction we get out of it. So the characterizing the Gen X's, Gen Y's, and all that stuff, and trying to slice them out.
Yeah.
You know what? They're people.
They're people,
They're
right?
people.
Well, and everybody has a different walk of life and does things differently. I mean,
Right.
look at you.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, again, we've got two not completely, but different types of businesses. Our advertising agency, Macklin Group, and the print side, they're different type of people. The Macklin Creative Group, they're creative people. They're a little kind of crazy.
We're a little out there.
But that's you
what we
got to
do.
have the creative stuff. You got to have that, and you need to give them an environment where they feel comfortable doing that. So the work schedule's a little flex, those type of things. Here we're a retail location, so we got set hours. So it's just different, but you'll find different people for different jobs. So
Well, it kind of goes with your flexible style.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes with who Ray is. And so when you think about Ray now, ready to celebrate a milestone birthday. So happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
When you look back and think about young Ray, not going to college and that, what do you
Shoulda.
think? Shoulda?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I wish I would have gone to North Central, actually. And I look at, when I was 18 years old, I thought I knew everything, as I'm finding out my son feels the same way. Sorry, JR. And you question authority, which I was really good at. Not because I was right, just because I like to question authority. I look at what North Central College brings and the 14-to-1 student-teacher ratio, the professors, how they really care about you, where you are central at North Central. That really resonates with me. And I think had I had to do it all over again, I would have picked a small, private liberal arts college, whether it be North Central College in Naperville or any other ones that can't hold a candle to North Central College but are like North Central College. I think that would have been a great home for me. And you don't get to do it over. As I tell people, I would not take the path if I got to do it over. A lot of the experiences, yes, but I would have gone to school. I would have stayed in school. I would have done that. Would I still gotten involved in the JECs? Absolutely.
Right.
But I still would have gone and got that sheepskin and done it the right way.
Well, you would have brought, just at a different time, you would have brought a different skill set
Right.
to it.
Well, and again, along my way, I've had great mentors along the way. Guys like Ken Cran and Tom Myers, Brian Nagel, and Scar. All those guys that are 10 to 15 years older than me, they're dear friends and people that have took me under the wing and showed me the way. So.
I think it's interesting, and I agree with you with the power of the small school. Some people thrive in a University of Illinois environment, and some need someone to just keep a little eye on them, because otherwise they're going to run amok.
Right. Well, and that's why I look at my daughter. She joined a sorority, and then she did a couple other things that made that big school small.
Right? Exactly. That's
which
the
is
best way to
cool.
do
At
it.
North Central, you don't necessarily have that, and I just think it's got a great environment. And again, the educational quality you get out of that is far and away superior, I think, at some of these big universities, because our professors are there to teach. So.
Yes. So when you're looking at this milestone birthday and thinking, what's next for Ray? What's next for Ray? Do you have anything?
I don't know. A lot more of the same, I think. I'm really excited about the direction the company's going in right now. I mean, we've had the 2008 to 2013 was not a great chapter in our business side. We held on, we survived, we're survivors, we're moving forward. It's an exciting time, we're building, we're going again. I really loved that back in the 90s when we were just going. I mean, you just go. It was fun. And I love to see that passion in our employees, and we've given Brian Scott and Rosemary and Brian Piper the opportunity to kind of be the leaders of the company and help us take us in that direction. Now, John and Kevin and I are certainly going to be involved in the decision, and it's certainly, ours are the names on the bank documents at the bank that says, yes, we'll pay you back this money we borrowed. But it's an exciting time, because I really think that we've got a great team, we've got a great message, and we're going in the right direction. So it's going to be exciting, and we can't wait to get this building redone and have Macklin move in here, so I can be closer to them, even though they don't want me any closer than I already am. But it's a really exciting time, and watching my kids grow up and seeing that. That's it. I'm excited to see what happens. So, from the community standpoint, Naperville. We have some challenges. We really do. And we need to face them head on. We need to work collectively and collaboratively with that. We need to all kind of get in a room and check the egos at the door and find out what the best solutions are for some of these problems. And I think we'll get there. I do have great hope for our community and now for our state and hopefully our country. So it's a good time.
Yes. Well, thanks for taking a few minutes and chatting with me.
Yeah,
it's always a
happy to.
pleasure.
Yeah.
I like to be able to talk with you and be able to get a little bit more about Ray, because you're always so good at promoting
I really
everybody
don't like
else.
talking about myself.
I
so-
know you don't, but you did a good job, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you sitting down
Well,
with me.
Thank you, Liz.
So-
It's an honor. So,
Happy birthday.
thank you.